Sorry about before there, fellas. Joe Pounder Cormier, I had the great pleasure of watching him play both hockey and baseball. He was born in 1922. His parents were Viola, I know her well, and Simon, his father. He attended Mount Carmel School where he played the various sports, baseball, hockey, basketball, and so on. And Mount Carmel School was associated with the Strand Gym because the Strand Gym was owned by Mount Carmel, and the Strand was originally the King's Theatre in Glace Bay, and it was bought by the parish to be a bingo hall, but it was soon found out that you could play basketball and have great dances and boxing. I even saw Tony Odo and Tommy Peck from Lewisburg fight down there, and there was no cut men involved, and there was no stopping the fights. They fought till one of them went down, so both full of blood. So that, and you had great dance, you had everything in the Strand, okay? And that's why I said before that most of these athletes, although they played baseball, basketball, and hockey, okay? And Joe, he came through that great minor basketball system, the same as I did. At the end, I was fortunate enough to do that. And they had a league. They had a system. There was no place else like it. They had house leagues. They had bantam, midget, juvenile, junior, right up into intermediate, they called it, but it was really senior. And all these guys like Freddie and these guys, even though they played the other sports, they still came through that system because baseball was associated. They used to dress there and go up to the field. Hockey, they used to arrive there where they were going. When they were playing hockey, there was no, the only thing was on the go was Sydney Forum, and they played in outdoor rinks. We're right on the corner of Pushy's rink here, which was where they practiced, and the Hawks rink up there. And the Hawks used to win Cape Breton intermediate hockey championships, you see. So Joe came through that system, and in 1937, he played on the Midget Strands team, which won the first maritime midget basketball championship ever to come to the town, and they did it in Moncton, on the road after losing the first game. And so he continued. He played that sport, but he also played hockey and baseball, the same as all these guys did that are up there. Okay, Charlie Pyle, all these guys. And I say that was the first golden era of sport in the town. Okay, the really first one was when the town had the pro baseball, okay, with all the imports, guys coming up and going down in regard to the big leagues, eh? And we had great play, local guys. Felt like Eddie Gillis was only 19 or 20, played second base with the great Morello, okay, who later played with Chicago White Sox and played in the World Series. He played here for shortstop in the Waterford, and that's the kind of guys. Well, after that, then you had Joe and Leo Fay and all these guys, Charlie Pyle and these guys, and they played everything, and they brought, you know, great pride to the town in doing that. But this all came, that's why I always talk about the Strand Gym. And there's Marshall DeVoe over there, who was 94. And that team there that won the Canadian Championship, he was the star there with Freddie, you see, on that. And they played over here, and they played the Ottawa grads, a bunch of young guys. And our fellas were out working in the mines the days that they played. They went out day shift and come back and played. And if you know the Strand Gym, it had a walkway around it, so you could, when you were dancing and so on, you could see what was going on. But when you were playing basketball, if you were going down, you couldn't shoot the ball because you'd hit the ceiling. And Marshall DeVoe over here was one of the greatest, and he come flying down, but he wouldn't shoot it. He'd just bounce her off the backboard. And he was dynamite at that, okay? And the only other fellow that I saw to come back and do that was Ali Ledbeer, senior. Ali played with us, and he left and went in the mines early. But Ali was a dynamite basketball player, and he had the same kind of thing, come roaring down the side and big go off the backboard he could make, right? So Pounder, he played the basketball, and he also, like I said, played the other sports like they did, okay? after they won that midget championship, okay, they played hockey, and one year this was 1937, they were in the junior league, and they led the Cape Breton Junior League for the whole year that year. And they finally lost out to the great Glace Bay team there with Father Hogan. Those guys were playing. They were more experienced, they had the rink and so on, and they played. But he played on that team, and he kept playing, like you said, the baseball, the basketball, the hockey. And in 1945-46, Pounder, as he was called, and I alluded to before, at that time, he had a wrist shot, and he shot that harder than most of the other people there. Okay, that's him over there. And he like I said, the only other fellow that was later on come was Bruce, okay, with his shooting there. Nobody could touch him. But Pounder at that time was great at that. Plus, which they don't know, Pounder was the greatest first baseman in the whole area. In fact, Mickey Connors played in the All-Pro League, taught Pounder. And Mickey Connors was around the bag, was the flashiest guy, beautiful. Like Lo was talking about, you know, Pounder, how he was always impeccably dressed and so on. But he practiced for hours with Mickey Connors, and Mickey Connors was teaching him. And those days, you hit the bag with the left foot this way, or right foot this way. They don't do it today. You got the big ox playing first, and he puts his foot on the bag and he stretches out, and that's the way it is, okay? Those days, you had those guys to relate it. He was the best. And he went up and played in the Quebec Provincial Pro League. Now, this is pro, okay? It was reputed to be Class B. Now, Class B today would be close to like AAA. And he was the only one around from here that played up there. He played in Shawinigan, and he played with Granby. And how he got up there, I don't know, because all the other great athletes we had around here and so on, there was nobody else. And my brother Billy, in 1947, after the war there, got a hold of him, up and got Pounder. He got Leo Fay, he got Eddie Gillis, okay, and he got Jim Morris from Glace Bay. Four from the Waterford and one from Cape Breton went up and played in the great Central Pro Baseball League in Halifax. That was allied with the Halifax and District League. And Pounder batted .315, and he only had one error in 40 games. And he was dynamite. And they lost in the championship to the strong Truro Bearcats at that time. But you imagine, four fellas from New Waterford and one from Glace Bay playing, and the rest were like imports from the States with a few other local guys. And they played on that team. The next year, most of the other fellas came back, and Pounder stayed, and he played another year there. And the guy that came in, and he couldn't field with Pounder, but the only reason he took Pounder's place was he was a power hitter, and that was the great Dick Gerners, who later played with the Boston Red Sox. I don't know, how many home runs did he get, Lowell with Boston?
Over 100.
Over 100. And that's the guy that took his place. He couldn't, in fact, he came up first, and they had to ask Pounder, like, for him to go in and so he could play, because he couldn't field with Pounder, and he couldn't play the position like Pounder. But he was one of the guys that was one of those bonus guys they sent down, and he had to play. But that's the kind of players that these guys played with and against, okay? You know, and in 1946, on that great hockey team that they had here, you imagine now, they played and they beat the Sydney Millionaires. They're all local guys playing on the outdoor rings, Pushy and the Hawks. And they beat Sydney Millionaires for that Cape Breton championship after 90 minutes of overtime. And Pounder, in the final game, scored one of the goals to put them ahead 2-1, and they ended up tying it and had to go into the overtime, and they won it in overtime. And the kid line there of Dougie Petrie and Mel Gadd and Leo Fay, they were up and down. They were playing junior, and then they were playing senior, and they were up and down, and they scored the winning goal. They went and played the Pictou County All-Stars. Now, Pictou County, they had all these imports. Like I said, guys like Tick Williams who play with the Maple Leafs, guys who were coming up and down, okay? And that's where they played local. And they lost in 2-game total goal series. And like I said to Mike Campbell, who saw that series, okay, in the Sydney Forum. And he said, Carl, if they had had another period, they probably could have won that, hey? But that's the kind of guy he was. And he played in 1945, with Waterford. They won that great Cape Breton Championship baseball. Now, and they beat Glace Bay Miners out, okay? And then they played off with the Spring Hill Fence Busters for the Nova Scotia champion. Spring Hill Fence Busters were the perennial maritime senior baseball champions, okay? And they were ridden with imports, okay? That's what they were. And their guys went up and played, lost in a hard-fought series. But we were always at a disadvantage anyway when we left the island in that case because of playing against those teams. But for the go and play pro ball and away and with Kenful in those places, and then to do what he did there was, along with these other good great guys, was something else. But I remember him because I was the mascot of the team, and that's what caught me. And I watched all of the players, all the imports that came in, what position they played, and left-handed hitters. I always watched them because to try and see what I could learn. But Joe was ahead of his time as far as I'm concerned in playing first base because he struck right off the bat. And he was a line drive hitter. He was a 300 hitter. Line sharp drive 300 hitter, okay? And he, not only that, but he was a nice guy. And Joe, a lot of people don't know, you see, a lot of these guys have another side to him. He became one of the greatest photographers that we had around there. In fact, he took the pictures for the weddings, he took my wedding pictures, he took sports pictures. He learned that by himself, had his own dark room, had his own equipment, developed his own film in those days. That was unheard of, okay? And that was another side of it. And all these guys, they had these other sides, they did so. So I can't say enough about Joe. He came back home in 45 and played with Waterford. 46. He played 48, 49, 50. The last year that we had the imports, that was 1950. I was the mascot in that. And the imports we had, Dave Barr and those fellas took off, and my brother Billy ended up playing coach, and that was his last year playing. But after that, they disbanded. That was the last year for the Cape Breton Senior Baseball. And after that, Joe and Marshall DeVoe and Charlie Pyle and these guys even had Vince Gutrow from Dominion. Vince Gutrow used to be called Ozark Guy. He played in the Cape Breton League, a really good ball player, and the Scatlones. And they won him, I think, the first maritime intermediate baseball. They were all working. They were older guys then too, because I remember I was down in this field and I saw that. Okay, so after he finished his career, like I said, in 50, and Joe was married to Anna McKinnon. Okay, and together they had 4 children: Lowell and Kenny, Greg, and Isabel. And the boys were actively involved. I think the 3 boys won a Nova Scotia basketball championship together, right? But I tell a little story. But when I was playing juvenile, we had no sponsors. If you were lucky, you had a couple of cars to go play, fine. But if you were going away to play against somebody, you hit the parishes for some money, and you hit the merchants, eh? And Anna and my sister Eileen were like that. And I can remember we were playing, and we had to go play off with Halifax Monarchs in the juvenile championship. And Anna and Eileen personally covered this whole town and collected the whole town. They collected, I think, enough for us to go away and along with the others to play. And Eileen and Anna in the stands, there was nobody could compete with them in the stands as far as anybody. Okay? They were out of their league whenever they wanted to try and compete with those fellas. And I remember Dempsey Ty. Remember Dempsey? Dempsey was with us. He used to come and he was dressed to kill every game, eh? And about the 7th inning, he might be having a few drinks, and we might be losing 6 or 7, nothing. He had $10 on Waterford, eh? And then this other guy, bald-headed guy, I can remember, he had a suit on, he was some reserve, and the 2 of them were in the stands out. He say, 10 more on the bay, eh, you see? And more than enough. Dempsey used to win because our fellas used to come back, eh? But that's the way they were, and they were in the stands, and nobody could challenge them at all. They took on the whole stands as far as that goes, eh? And all I can say is that, he was, at the end, I you know, he was one that, like you said, he was noticeable because I noticed him when he was playing. And a fella stands out when he plays, you notice him. Some of you don't. So all I can say, he was a great athlete, a great guy, a great family man, and I'm proud to say a few words for him today in this dedication to the Waterford Sports Hall of Fame. Oh yes, and I want to call Joe's two grandsons, up. Joe, was it? Joe and Todd? Scott. Yeah. Scott. Yeah, two grandsons to accept the plaque for. Okay, there they go.
Okay, I just want to say a few words because my father is a very humble man. He would be almost embarrassed about this. My mother would be off the charts. And I think you pretty well know where I got my personality after Carl finished speaking, and the fundraising ability. But anyhow, Kenny, I don't know if Kenny was there, and maybe he got disgusted with me and he didn't do it for Kenny. But we had a clinic every day in our backyard, and that's what people don't understand. He's pretty quiet and assuming, but he was really ahead of his time and knowing how to do things. And even when he took up carpentry, well, he became almost an expert at it in the photography. But we had backyard fundamentals, bunting, sacrifice bunts, drag bunts, 3 ways to throw, 4 ways to throw overhand, 3/4, sidearm, cross your body. We're practicing that stuff. Guys don't even know how to do that today and don't even know that a lot of that stuff exists. We did sacrifice bunts. We had competitions. He taught me how to, when I was pitching, to throw a crossfire. The first time I heard that word crossfire in 35, 40 years was Jerry Remy mentioned the other night on a Red Sox game where a guy steps across his body and throws. It's not underhand, it's called crossfire. So we had I could talk to you for an hour about the things that we did in our backyard, way before I reported to Lanky Sampson for my first Little League duty. And then he was, I don't know where he got this, but he was really into equipment. And I remember everything he ever said to me. I really do, about sports, because I was interested in it. He talked about tacks. He had a pair of tacks then. That was the big, but a lot of people don't know it. The boot was made by Tackleberry and the blade was made by CCM. That's the way it was way back then. And I know that. I couldn't even lace the skates up. Sherwood hockey sticks, he talked to me about lies. Take me in the kitchen and got the stick down and going over all these lies. Louisville Slugger, he said the best bat was 125. And people don't know this, that the baseball bats were made by Northern White Ash, from Northern White Ash. Why did I know that? Because he told me. They're running out of Northern White Ash now, and they're making the bats with maple, and you watch all the cracked bats flying across the fields these days, that's because there's no more Northern White Ash. He talked about the best gloves. Wilson, Rawlings, and McGregor. And McGregor is what Mike, because I got into it because he did, and he showed me. And I watched Mike when he came home, and I went over and looked in the dugout, and he had a McGregor glove. Mike told me a funny story. He was in Nebraska, it was 100 and 105 degrees, and he had to practice. He said that's where he lost his hair, but his baseball glove that he brought from the Waterford melted. And then my father, when we were in Boston, we went to Fenway one time, we went to Dick McAuliffe's sports store, we buy all these good gloves. And so I'm just standing back there amazed. These two are having a conversation. They're talking about equipment. They're talking about the yellowback spot bill. Spot bill was the big spike, or yellowback kangaroo. So Buddy told him where to go buy them. So we went and bought some. But this guy's talking to him about the best gloves, and they're having a conversation. And this guy tells my father, well, they're all going to China. This is 1960-61. He said they're going to send all the patents and the leather to China. They're going to make them in China. And look where we're at today. That's where they're making 95% of the gloves, except for the best ones. The major league ones say made in USA. And then in the 1960 World Series, a guy by the name of Dick Grout comes to bat for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was the shortstop with Mazeroski. And he was a great basketball player. He played in the NBA. He was Duke College Player of the Year, but he was a better baseball player. And when we were taught to bunt, you were taught to square around. Well, this is 1960, and I'm watching the game with my father, and Dick Grout pivoted around, rather than throw his body in front of the plate and pivot around, sacrifice bunt. Well, 35 years, my father said he's going to change the game. And 35 years later, that's what they're doing now. And then he tried to introduce me to photography. And I'd sit at the table and he'd be talking about f-stops and speeds and I'd be asleep. I'm telling you, did I ever fake that? It was unbelievable. I think Kenny got that part of it. I don't know if he got all the baseball clinics. But he never talked about himself. Never, ever, ever. He talked about Skip Ferguson, who he said was the best ball player that came out of around here. And then he talked about a guy by the name of Dick Kennard. So when you're listening, you're half listening. Well, Dick Kennard, okay. Dick Kennard, well, he played when I played in Kentville, he said, and he went on to play in the major leagues. And so anyhow, I rushed home. You know how you rush home after school? You rush home after school and the game's on the black and white and Cincinnati Reds are playing the New York Yankees, 1961 World Series. And all of a sudden, Dick Kennard comes up as a pinch hitter late in his career. And the best third base plays of all time were made by Clete Boyer and Brooks Robinson. Clete Boyer made a couple in that World Series, and Brooks Robinson made a couple better later on. Well, and I looked at it on YouTube last night. It's up there. He made a play off Dick Kennard. It was unbelievable. Going to his left in the hole on his knees and threw him out. So my father was quite excited about that, okay? So this is the end of the story. I know you're getting ready, but you really want to get rid of me, I know that. But listen, I can't help it. I got my mother's genes, okay? 2 years ago, I got a call in February. Buzzy Connors. I thought, this should be good. So he says, Lowell, how about coming to Boston for a game? I said, for what? But just for a ball game. Oh yeah, okay. Reverend Roach wants to go, and Sweeney Hinchy. And what normal guy would leave in the Waterford with those guys? So anyhow, I couldn't figure that out. I said, I got weak, eh? Chris says, I'll go with them. I said, okay, I'll go with them. They wanted my car, that's for sure. And they wanted my knowledge of Boston. So, I'll get the tickets, Buzzy said, okay, that should be good. So Buzzy gets the tickets. And he calls me about 3 weeks later. So we're gonna go, oh yeah, that's good. Because I had some tech days at school. They owed me days, so I could do that. I had that flexibility. So anyhow, when are you going? April. I said, is there something wrong with you? All those games in April are just ridiculous. They're like 40 degrees out, 32 degrees, rain and sleet. So anyhow, I went with them. This is an amazing story. So I went with them and took my big caper jacket with the hood on it and everything I could take, eh? So we got up there and we had 2 days that were unbelievable, like scorching days. I was meant to be there, and you'll know why in a minute. And the third day was rained out. So anyhow, I didn't know it. It was the 100th anniversary of when the Red Sox first played the Yankees. And everybody knows about that rivalry, the great Red Sox about playing the Little League Yankees. But anyhow, the game is getting ready to start Saturday afternoon, and they played this Field of Dreams type music, this Chariots of Fire type music, really inspirational music, and all of a sudden, out of the left field fence, out of the gate there, comes Carl Yastrzemski. So he's now on the field with a uniform top. And then you look around, and Dwight Evans is coming out of right field. You look around, and Freddie Lynn is coming out of center field. Carlton Fisk is coming from behind the plate. And Rico Petrocelli is coming out of the dugout and going to shortstop, and so on. They trotted out their all-time best players. Bill Lee and all kinds of players. And so guess who comes out on the field? Dick Kennard. So all the times my father, I didn't want to go with these guys. I'm telling you, sorry, Duncan. But I think it was divine intervention that I ended up there in Dick Kennard. And I did some research on him. He's the 88th ranked Red Sox of all time. I'm just going to tell you how good he was. He batted cleanup behind Ted Williams. So think about that. So anyhow, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Cormier family to the committee. Thank you.